our first lecture. So each week I'm going to post a series of lectures that go over my interpretations of your textbook, along with, I like to use the textbook, the American Spirit, which is full of primary sources, as well as another textbook called the American Pageant, which they use in several AP classes. But anyway, each week whenever I post those, look through them. I will also post the PowerPoint that goes along with this, and that way you can get a little more background information on the topics that we're going over in class. So, looking over this, to develop the definition of an American, you have to go all the way back to the Great Ice Age. And of course, this is long before any Europeans ever set foot in what we now call the United States or North or South America. So, that Great Ice Age took place approximately 35,000 years ago. Reason why we were able to cross over from parts of Asia into what we now call the United States through Alaska is because glaciers had formed and dropped ocean levels. And whenever those glaciers formed and dropped ocean levels, a land bridge came into view. We now refer to that as the Bering Strait. That is between present-day Siberia, Russia, and the state of Alaska. Now, what happened was the Asians that came over here were primarily concerned with looking for food. And so those tribes of hunters and gatherers followed herds across the land bridge and into North America from Europe and Asia. And eventually, whenever they got into what we now call the United States and further south down into South America, they just developed villages and stayed here. Okay, now that ice age ended about 14,000 years ago, they estimate. The sea levels are going to rise during that period of time. The land bridge is going to disappear, and we are eventually going to separate into what we call two worlds. So we have the old world, which is Europe, and they knew about it, and then we have the new world, which it will come to be called, which is both the continent of North and South America, and they had yet to be quote-unquote discovered by Europeans. Now that term discovery I have a little bit of an issue with. The Americas had already been discovered, obviously. There are lots of people living over here, millions of them. The Europeans discover it. So technically we are going to call this unit European exploration instead of the discovery of the Americas. Now, the people of North and South America, there are about 54 million people that lived here in 1492, just prior to Columbus's arrival. More on him here in a few minutes. But the people are going to be divided into multiple tribes and numerous civilizations. These civilizations, in some cases, are extremely advanced. And in fact, mathematically, some of them are as advanced as the Europeans and the Asians were, that were completely separated. Some particular tribes of note, the Incas in South America, they had a great civilization. They were primarily terrace farmers, in which they built up terracing on mountains and were able to farm there. The people of Central America, Mexico, excuse me, those two main tribes there. The first one I'm actually going to flip here. The Maya, they were not as numerous as the Aztecs. They actually get wiped out, and their civilization dwindles down around the year 900, and a lot of their cities are abandoned. Now, one of the wonders of the world, if you've ever been there, is a place called Chichen Itza, which is a huge pyramid that is located in the Yucatan Peninsula just outside of Cancun. It's a couple hours bus ride from Cancun. Highly recommend going if you've ever not been there. But they have massive pyramids that rival some of those that you would find over in Asia. And this was very intricately decorated, and it still outlasted the civilization. Obviously, it's still there. Now, the Aztecs, they're an extremely advanced civilization. They're further inland into Mexico, and as a matter of fact, have a city named Tenochtitlan, which is where current-day Mexico City is located. They primarily rely on corn within their city and civilization. And the Aztecs are going to be of note because their downfall is a very tragic one. So I will talk more about that when we get to the conquistadors. In North America, with Native Americans live up here in the modern-day United States and region as we know as Canada today. You have two tribes. The Anazis, I believe I'm pronouncing that right. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Give them due credit. But they were cliff dwellers. Okay, they reside primarily in the southwestern part of the United States, Arizona, New Mexico. Don't believe they reach as far east as Texas, but primarily out there centered around rivers and building their tribes around cliffs. Okay, here in Central America, multiple tribes build mounds. The most extravagant mounds are located in Cahokia, Illinois, just outside of St. Louis. And again, this is within a day's drive from probably where you're sitting right now. Highly recommend going out there if you never have been. So, in that mound you can see here in the picture, that was built by hand. Okay, they did not have excavators or anything like that to help them. It was just something that we're left in awe of, as again, it was built by hand tools. Okay, and very crude hand tools according to Europeans. But the Europeans get over here and see these and knew that they did not fit in with the landscape and did a little bit of research and come to find out they built mounds. Even here in the Ozarks, my parents have some land over by Lebanon. People were out there would build mounds, not nearly as intricate as this one or as massive as this one, but would do so in order to keep their places where they lived free of any water that may flow in, stuff like that. So anyway, this of course is a mass scale mound, but a lot of tribes still use mounds in the centuries that follow. Now, a few other things that you need to know. The Haudenosaunee League, or the Great League of Peace. Okay, this is in the northeastern part of the United States, primarily New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and through there. Those people are going to be parts of the Iroquois tribes. Okay, and those tribes consist of the Mohawk, the Seneca, the Cayuga, the Oneida, and the Onondaga. Again, that is in the northeastern part of the United States. And again, if your ancestry is one of those tribes and I'm mispronouncing this, I apologize. But anyway, those tribes banded together to form this Great League of Peace and prevent individual rivalries from arising. You also have in the southeastern part of the United States tribes that some of you all may have family members that descended from. My family does as well. But the Creek, the Choctaw, the Chickasaw, and the Cherokee. Okay, parts of Georgia, maybe the Carolinas, and through there. These people actually have permanent villages. All right. Now, those villages would stick together, and if as soon as a resource was depleted, those villages would move. But it's not like they were constantly, like some people think about out here on the plains, they just followed the herds of buffalo. Not exactly whenever they were living in the southeast. Okay. Now, also in addition to the various things that they would hunt, the North American tribes utilized corn along with squash and beans. That created a very healthy diet, okay, full of carbs, and it helped increase populations here in North America. The Europeans get a hold of this and combine it with a few things that they had, particularly they took potatoes and combined it with milk. They were able to eat that, they become healthier, and it increased the population over in Europe. Okay, but the Native Americans have been doing this for centuries before the Europeans came over here. So again, I say, just because the Europeans didn't consider them to be very advanced does not necessarily mean they weren't very advanced. Okay, on the contrary, the Native Americans, as you'll read through some of the resources this week, they may not have considered the Europeans to be as advanced as they were, or that they had better ways of life than the Europeans. Okay, so back to the land. Each tribe is going to be extremely respectful of the lands they live on. Okay, literally because they live off of it. They're going to have territory, and they're going to say that no single person can own that land, but they are going to say that people can use the land and improve it, or that they can farm off of it and utilize whatever they can from the land. But ownership of land, not necessarily something they had a concept of. They also are not interested in acquiring possessions. About 10 million people lived in the present United States right as Columbus had arrived. That's an approximation. It's not like they had a census. But approximately 10 million people lived in the modern United States in 1492, which is a pretty sizable population whenever you consider how spread out these people were. Religion of Native Americans. This is a very critical component of life for most tribes. They have rituals and they have ceremonies that are mostly concerned with hunting and gathering or farming. Okay, and they would give thanks to various gods. They would give thanks to various elements. And they also, in order to bless, quote unquote, bless somebody before they went out on a hunt, they had ceremonies for that. These vary from tribe to tribe. And I could go into multiple details on a few of them that I know, but this is a survey course, so we unfortunately don't have time to go through each individual tribe, and I don't want anybody to feel left out. Okay? Just know that in each tribe, the religious leaders, they did not have necessarily a hierarchy, but they were highly respected. And I mean hierarchies, let me back up here, a hierarchy like you will see in Europe, like with social pyramids and stuff like that. But the religious leaders are going to be highly respected and powerful within each tribe. Okay, so they will be looked to for wisdom and guidance for that tribe. Now, the social hierarchy that I was mentioning, the one in Europe, a little more cut and dry. The one here, a little more, you have something or you don't. Okay, the mound builders, they practice the social pyramid tactic of having the most powerful people living close to the sun. The less powerful people are going to live further down the mounds. That would be like the nobles. The people at the top, more than likely the priests, the spiritual leaders, as well as the chief of the tribe or whatever they call their highly respected leader. But again, like I said, in Europe, it's very cut and dry what they had. Wealth's not a very much concern to the Native Americans. A lot of things are going to be shared. Okay, the power, it may reside with somebody who had killed something on the hunt, or it may have been somebody that protected the village from attack. So anyway, it just varied from tribe to tribe who had more power and who did not. Women are also going to be highly respected in these tribes. This is in stark contrast to Europe. Okay, and we will go through the European views on women. We'll go through the Puritan views on women. Just know Native Americans gave women a lot more respect and power than the Europeans did. So that's why another reason why some of the Native American tribes kind of said the Europeans were barbaric, okay, in terms of how they treated women and as well as how they treated the Native Americans, or as we've come to find. Now, the leaders are still going to be mostly men in these tribes. And let me back up here. Women could actually divorce if they wanted to. In Europe, it took a pardon from the Pope in order to get that done, or a decree from the Pope. Or, as some kings may have done, they may have executed their wives in order to get that divorce. The common people, very uncommon to have a divorce. All right. Now, the leaders, again, in these tribes are going to be mostly men, because the men were the ones that went out on the hunt, okay, or that went out to gather. Now, the women are going to play a large role in helping choose those leaders, but you've got to keep in mind, whenever the leaders are gone from the village, somebody's going to still have to take care of the village. This role went to the women, and they were left to farm and raise children. Farming was a huge part of life. Women are extremely well respected because they, one, raised the kids, two, they kept the village fed until the men got back. Because, let's face it, unless you have your meat that you can't bring back from a hunt cured, it's not going to stay around very long. Whereas the stuff that you pick or farm is going to be around much longer, okay, in terms of being preserved. They did not have preservatives back then, so it is very critical to try to stockpile some of this food for the months where they're not going to have it. And again, farming is where they got most of their food from. So that concludes part one. I'm going to stop the video here, and then we'll go on to part two here in just a second.